The SRL on the NFL. Previews, predictions, and analysis covering every storyline in football every week. The SRL on the NFL. Hey everyone, Brendan Yerkes here with Alex Vachapante for another edition of SRL on the NFL. And it's Championship Sunday coming up this week. We're through the divisional round. There's 4 teams left on the road to the Super Bowl, and we will have our champions crowned on Sunday. Alex, another great weekend of football. How are you doing today?
I mean, yeah, last week was just insane when you look at some of the games. There was teams that I thought were definitely going to win that definitely didn't end up winning. So these current matchups are really interesting. It's gonna be a battle. It's gonna be a battle for the Super Bowl. It's gonna be really fun.
They do say the divisional round is the best weekend of football of the year. You get 4 games, and it's typically the best 8 teams. So, it showed. I mean, I think Saturday, the first game was a little bit hit or miss. You know, the Chiefs and all, and a lot of people get frustrated with that. The
Yep.
night game was a surprise, but shootout. And the Sunday games were both really good as well. So I don't think you could ask for a better weekend of football going into a pretty surprising championship Sunday with a game that I think nobody really expected, and then a game that everybody probably expected and did want to see and got it, as we've seen pretty consistently. But with those, it's the Chiefs and the Bills as the night game as the AFC Championship, and then the afternoon game, the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles. So, yes, we've seen the Eagles a decent amount in the last few years, but I feel like the NFC has had a lot more parity with teams as obviously the AFC. This is, I think, the 7th year in a row the Chiefs are in the AFC Championship, and this is the 6th time that they're hosting it, I believe. There was one, well, was there a year they didn't have it?
I don't know.
No, last year was in Baltimore. It wasn't, because I
Oh
remember they
yes,
were the
in
3
Baltimore.
seed last year.
Yeah,
I was trying to think, because I know that the when they played the Bills last year, it was in the divisional round, and it was in Buffalo.
correct.
So
Yeah.
they get the home game again, the Arrowhead Invitational, as it's been called. But we're going to go over the divisional games, talk a little bit about the coaches again, and then go into those championship games and kind of lay them out with the preview once again. So we'll start in Kansas City, like we just mentioned. Houston Texans go in. They beat the Chargers in the first round. A little bit of a surprise there. I think we both expected the Chargers to win. Chargers weren't great. Texans get their second straight year winning their home playoff game. They go on to Kansas City, and last year they went on to Baltimore, lost. This year they go to Kansas City, and it seemed like they put up a good fight. Their defense, especially their defensive line, made a big impact in this game. I want to, start there. I just think that the Chiefs' offense kind of struggled. They would get close, but had trouble getting into the end zone, and I think that's what kept the Texans into the game for so long. And I think it starts with that front 7 that they had there.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point. And the Texans were pretty much in this game for throughout the most of the game, which I think going into Arrowhead you would take that. The Texans just they're not the team that we expected them to be, and I think part of that also is the injuries that they had throughout the year. They had a bunch of injuries that they were dealing with, but also just the expectations. Once you get expectations, it feels much harder, and also second year with Stroud. He's still very young and I think very good. I think he needs a little bit more time. And I don't but again, I don't think that they're too far off. I just think they need some time. They need a little bit more time, and this was again a very solid year for them. I don't think again, we didn't even have them in this round. So I think that's a fair point to think about.
I agree. The expectations were definitely very high going into the year, which probably not deserved a little bit, not too much. I think that they were a little bit higher than what they should have been. Because yes, they won the playoff game last year, so they should have had some expectations to win that division again. But they
Right.
were being talked about as one of the better teams in the AFC. They did get the 4 seed, but probably would have been the 5, I think, just based on records and stuff like that. So they put up a fight. I know there was a lot to talk about penalties in this game too. So that's my concern for Kansas City going forward, that they got those calls that a lot of people are saying, but I don't think that's really what made or break this game. I think they're just better than the Texans, but still, I don't think this is a typical dominant divisional round Kansas City Chiefs performance like we've seen in past years. So I think going into the next round, maybe they could turn it up, but I think this is more of the same way that they've won all year. Yeah, they're 15-2, but a lot of these games, yeah, you win, so you can't really complain. And I'm not saying they're a bad team, but they haven't really looked dominant, and I think in a long time. I think it's been like October was the last time I really was like, this Chiefs team is dominating right now, and I think it showed. They did what they needed to do to win. They did, and now they go into the AFC Championship game with those struggles.
Yeah, I mean, their offense has been a struggle all year. This is probably Mahomes' worst year as a starter, I would say. And yeah, I mean, they're able to grind and get through it, but it's so weird how their identity has flipped. Because they used to be a dominant offensive team, and now they're more of just a defensive team. And I think, though, especially it's weird with Mahomes, because Mahomes just, again, doesn't look like himself. But all of that's cured by winning, and they win. So if they go out and somehow beat the Bills and somehow win the Super Bowl, no one's going to care about the whatever year Mahomes had. They're going to say, wow, they three-peated. That's what everyone's going to talk about. They're not going to say, oh, well, Mahomes didn't have that great of a year.
Right. And here's another thing on why Mahomes has been bad. Last year he had a down year too, if you remember,
Right.
compared to his other standards. And the last 2 years, Matt Nagy was his offensive coordinator. Where before that, it was Eric Bieniemy.
Makes sense.
So Matt Nagy comes in, and now he gets interviewed for the Jets head coaching job. Didn't get it, thank God. We'll talk about that later. And he's had his 2 worst years as a starter under Matt Nagy. So I would think that matters. I think that's a correlation there.
Yeah. I
So
never thought Nagy was a great offensive mind to begin with, so it's something to think about.
right. So, they're saying, oh, he's having success. Well, yeah, he's with the best quarterback on the planet right now, so I would hope so.
Right.
One positive, though, I mean, we're talking so horribly about the Chiefs right now, even though they did win and they're in the AFC Championship for the 7th straight year. But
True.
like I said, not the same dominating way as in the past. But Travis Kelce had a great game. He always comes to play in the playoffs.
Yep.
117 receiving yards in this game, 7 receptions, and a touchdown. Always comes out when he needed to. I think if they're going to beat Buffalo in the next game, which we'll preview later, that he needs to be the center point of the offense again, like he has been over the years. And I think they need more out of the run game. Kareem Hunt was their leading rusher in this game, 44 yards. They need more on the ground. You saw the Ravens, which we'll, again, talk about next in that game, against the Bills. They had a lot of success running the ball, and they got away from it. And I think that's why they lost, which we'll talk about. But you got to be able to run the ball, and that'll help your pass game. And I think that the Bills front is not as tough as this Texans front. But I think if you're Kansas City, you're happy your defense shut the door again. Your offense, you need more from. You're definitely going to need more from in another Allen Mahomes battle. But the Chiefs, they beat the Texans and move on. Texans out in the divisional round, 2nd straight year. Alex, anything you want to add on this game before we move on?
I would say, because you mentioned the run game, I think the biggest X factor going into the next round is going to be Pacheco. Getting him back and getting him going, because Pacheco is one of the toughest runners in the NFL when he's fully healthy and everything. So it's frustrating to see that he's only getting 5 carries. I know he wasn't efficient and they had to lean more towards Hunt, but if they want to be successful, they need Isaiah Pacheco to be at his best.
Yeah, and Hunt only had 8 attempts, so
Yeah,
really not a lot of rushing attempts from the Chiefs at all in that game.
right.
So they need to find a way to get that balance back, because Pacheco really, since he's come back, hasn't done anything.
Yeah,
As you
essentially.
just mentioned. So I don't know if they're saving him, but you got 2 games left at most, so you might want to start figuring that out.
Yeah.
But he's shown success. He definitely had a good game. But Xavier Worthy's been their best, aside from Travis Kelce, obviously their biggest offensive weapon, and I think they're going to need him to make some flashy plays too against Buffalo. All right, the night game on Saturday, NFC. Detroit Lions were the number 1 seed playing the number 6 seeded Washington Commanders, who beat the Buccaneers the week before. And it might be one of the biggest upsets in NFL playoff history. Jaden Daniels has done it again. 299 passing yards, 70% completion, 2 touchdowns, and now joins a very small list of quarterbacks to win 2 road playoff games in their rookie year, joining Joe Flacco and the one and only Mark Sanchez. So
Nice.
impressive. And I don't know what to talk about more, the Commanders or the Lions. I think it's a master class on one end and a disaster class on the other end. I think the Lions just seemed like they weren't ready for this game, and they had the week off, and they just didn't seem prepared. We know both their coordinators are out the door. Um, they both got hired this week to be head coaches. We knew that before the game that they were going to get hired by somebody, both of them. We didn't know where exactly, but we knew that was going to be a possibility. You could think maybe their heads were in the wrong place, but I think if you're coaching a team that could win, you're still going to put the effort in to win while you're working that job. So I don't really think that's it. It's just something was off about the Lions this game, and the Commanders took full advantage.
I think part of it is the bye. And I think when teams aren't used to playing with the bye, it throws them off. We've seen this many times. We've seen it with the Ravens a few years ago when they played the Titans. We've seen the only team that really usually isn't affected by this new bye for them is the Chiefs because they've done it so many times. They're used to it. When teams that don't normally get the 1 seed get the bye, you see some tapering off. You see some issues there. And they still put up 31 points. That's a lot of points. It's not on the offense. The offense was pretty good. I mean, Goff didn't have his best game. Too many turnovers. We can't allow that. But overall, offensively, they looked solid. They were able to move the ball. It was just that defense was getting torched.
And I think the problem with the defense is just they had, 10-plus guys on IR from throughout the year.
Yeah.
So I think that's just tough. You score that many points and your defense is doing the best they can, but when you're not playing your starters, who are very good starters too, still good depth to be able to put up a decent performance, it's just tough. But I think what you mentioned with the bye is important because this kind of reminds me of baseball a little bit. And
yeah,
I think the bye is obviously way more important than football, and I think it doesn't affect the team as much. It actually helps a team in football where, you get to rest, you get to game plan more. Where in baseball, when you're playing every single day and you have the bye in that playoffs, that it hurts you. And I think that might have happened here because, the Lions, yes, they were fighting for the 1 seed in the division.
Mm-hmm.
They, were doing that all year. Then you get a week off and then you play. So then they get a week off, and the Commanders, basically for the last month of the season, were battling their way into the playoffs to even have a chance, where the Lions, we knew they would make it in, whether it'd be the top seed or a different seed that they had to fight for, and then they just stopped, and now they had to pick it up again. So maybe you're right with that. And I think it showed. The Commanders came out and, in the beginning of the game and made a statement, and they took it to the end, and it was a really good game in the air. Diami Brown really coming out, Terry McLaurin getting most of the attention, so they're going to need to use those secondary guys, and they did. And Jaden Daniels is just a special talent.
Special talent. I mean, he's not a rookie. He's a rookie.
Doesn't look like it. I think he's looked way better than Stroud, too, last year. And everybody raved about Stroud. And that's not a slight on him. I think Daniels is just way better.
It's hard to argue with that. I mean, Daniels is already in the championship game. This is unprecedented. I'm stunned that he made it. This is and at this point it's really hard to pick against them. And throughout the entire season, I mean, look at their recent games. I've been saying this every time we go on here, but they're winning these very close games. They're used to this. They're battle tested throughout the season. And that shows in the playoffs. And they played an offensive juggernaut and completely outshined them.
Right.
You outshine the offensive juggernaut. That's insane. And they were able to pull that off. They are going to be a force to be reckoned with for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, they're only going to get better, more experienced. Terry McLaurin deserves this. Dan Quinn deserves a lot of credit for what he's done. He was a very good head coach with Atlanta, I think. He got them to the Super Bowl, obviously the crushing loss. Yeah. And I think when they let him go, it was just like, we need to start fresh. And that's fine. That happens sometimes. But he was still a good coach, was great in Dallas as the D coordinator, and you knew he was going to get another chance soon. I didn't think the Commanders were the fit. I was like, all right, that's surprising. I didn't think he would go there. I think they'd maybe want somebody offensive. But they went with the experienced head coach, and it's been great. I mean, Adam Peters has done a good job as GM, and they've set this team up. I talked in the beginning of the year how they added a lot of veterans on this team to support their young talent, like Bobby Wagner and Austin Eckler on each side of the ball. They've been fantastic in helping that. A lot of other good signings, like a Frankie Louvu on the defensive side with Bobby Wagner. really changing the culture around there after years of it being a nightmare in Washington, and
Most
now they
definitely.
fixed it. But one more thing I want to mention on the Lions side of things, which really turned the game, was I think that disastrous trick play. I think when you're down in that situation, you're at about midfield. Why would you take the ball out of your quarterback's hand and let a receiver throw the ball, especially into traffic like that, unless it was a sure thing, guy wide open play? That doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know where you stand on that. I mean, I get trying to mix it up, but it just seems like too risky of a play, and it completely backfired, and they got nothing out of that. And then that's really where the game turned fully into Washington's hands.
The thing is, like, I made this argument last year when they got knocked out by the Niners. Like, yeah, it's you shouldn't be making ultra aggressive plays like that, and then they don't end up working out. But it's who they are, and yeah, like it stinks that it didn't work out like it should have, but it's who they are, and that's a Dan Campbell team. That's what they're gonna do. Now, it's horrible that the outcome turned out that way, but had it been a touchdown, I don't think people would be saying that. They would be saying, "Oh wow, what a genius, Dan Campbell. That was a smart move." So
Right.
like, it stinks of the outcome, but it's who they are as a team, and it's tough. You want to go against your identity and be more conservative. That's not who they are.
I just don't like the play call. I mean, you could do a trick play. I just think that one is just there's too many moving pieces. It could have been
Fair
a
point.
disaster, a fumble, even behind the line of scrimmage. But then just letting him pass, then just he's chucking it up to triple coverage. Like you can't
Yeah,
be putting that in a receiver's hands because his mind, he's like, it's a trick play. I got to throw it.
right.
Where the quarterback can maybe make a better read. I think you got to make it do a trick play, but make it a little bit easier in the mind of your receiver.
I agree with
But yeah, I don't know. I think that it's not that it was a trick play. It was just that trick play was just
that. Right,
not it in
not the
that
best one.
situation.
It's
All right,
fair.
let's move to Sunday. Rams and Eagles. This was a really good game, back and forth, where the Eagles got the win. Snow game at home, 28-22. They win. They missed 2 extra points. That gave the Rams a chance to come back at the end. And the Rams, they did look good in this game in the cold. But I think it was really this was the Eagles' game to lose. Jalen Hurts, same thing as usual, not a lot of yards, but it's been the Saquon Barkley show. He's basically carried this team all year, at least leading the way offensively with their receivers not really getting the ball as much with them passing less. But 205 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns is just insane. It really is just insane. Saquon Barkley getting a chance to play in the playoffs, which we know he did 2 years ago, but this team is different. A Super Bowl contender at
Yeah.
that with the Eagles, and him going off is crazy. And then the Eagles defense makes the stand at the end. But what a game this was.
This was an amazing game. Something that I wanted to point out as I was watching it, though, Saquon was having an amazing game. He did have a great game, no doubt. When he ran for that 78-yard touchdown with 4 minutes left, I was actually like, you may have just gave them an opportunity. And they almost took advantage of it. The fact that he ran it in for the touchdown instead of getting maybe by the goal line or something like that and then sliding so that you could take off a lot more time off the clock would have been, I think, the better, smarter move in my opinion.
Well,
Like,
I get it. I think just maybe with the weather, you might just need to get in the end zone.
but like for instance, like remember a couple years ago with the Jets and the Browns, and they end up scoring that touchdown around like 4-ish minutes left. And you're like, oh well, the game's over. They are like up 2 scores or whatever. And the Jets come storming back. Like it's like
Yeah,
you
I remember
technically
that.
gave them that opportunity. And they got the ball back. Like there was technically a chance. I know that they were able to lock it down and like whatever. Like they end up winning. Don't worry about it. But you have to be a little bit smarter with your clock management. And it almost bit them.
Well, I mean, I don't think he bursted like they expected him to burst free and score a 78-yard touchdown. I think they were just going to run out the clock and just push it down the field. But then you burst free. It's like almost hard to like be that wide open and then just run that far down the field and just not score. Like, I
Players do it
think
all
it's
the time.
different.
Players do it all the time. And it
Not in
secures
that
wins.
scenario, though.
It secures them wins, though. Players do it all the time. They'll run out of bounds or like just slide with like being on like the 4 or the 5.
Well, he did slide in the end zone.
He slid in the end zone. But I'm saying, I know this sounds whatever because they ended up winning, so who cares? But the Rams got the ball back. They had a chance to somehow come back. So you have to be careful with that. And whatever. I mean, again, he had 200 yards, great game, whatever. I'm just saying, for future, you got to think a little bit more about time management, and that could be
Yeah.
also on the coaching staff, which I have issues with their coaching staff, but that's another topic for another.
Well, I think they're definitely going to need to get the pass game going in the championship game. The
Yeah,
defense was good once again, but with the defense being good, they were good in spots. And I
that's
think
a good
the
point.
Rams are definitely going to be back. I think they had a little dip after their Super Bowl because they traded all their draft picks and they were way over the salary cap and all that.
Yeah,
But they have incredible drafting. I mean, Jared Verse has been tremendous. Matt Stafford, 325 yards in this game, 2 touchdowns. He's still doing his thing all these years later.
yep,
They another offseason for them, and they could be even a top team in the mix next year in the NFC and have another chance to go far. Because again, they almost won this game, and being a California team to go in the snow and almost win is kind
right.
of impressive. So I think that there's some hope there for sure.
Also, again, they started off so slowly this year with all those injuries and everything. We wrote them off basically week 5 or 6. So they
Yep.
came back, they made the playoffs, which is commendable itself, and they almost pushed it. They almost made the NFC title game, which is very impressive. So a very solid season for them. Nothing to shake their heads over, but they're going to be back. I agree with
Yep.
you. I think they're going to be back in the playoff mix for sure next year.
All right, last game, Ravens, Bills, and what does it come down to? Mark Andrews. Not once, but twice he sold this game for the Ravens. The first attempt, nice 20-yard gain. Instead of just electing to run forward, he tries to cut back and go the other way to get around defenders, loses the ball in the process, has it punched out, and then gets another chance. Ravens storm down the field, down by 2-point conversion. Ball's in his hands. He drops it. And that would have been it to tie the game. Probably force overtime, but maybe not. I mean, there was still about a minute and change left on the clock. Josh Allen could have got down for a field goal attempt. You never know at that point, but they would have tied the game and gave themselves a chance. He sold that twice. But again, it comes down to the Ravens not being able to win the big one in the Lamar Jackson era. I said it last week. This game was big for both these teams, for Allen and Lamar. Both MVP conversation. Both can't win the big one, where the biggest one really is the week after. But for one of them to beat the other one was a big deal.
Yeah.
These guys are top 5 quarterbacks. You could say top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL if you want to. For them to beat each other would mean something to get the chance to play Mahomes.
Right.
And Lamar, time and time again, does not get it done. So I don't know what they do next. We said this last year. Their team was built perfectly. They couldn't get it done. This year, I think this was a favorable matchup for them on the road. They were actually favored on the road. Don't get it done. Allen wins again. Now Allen still has to dethrone Mahomes because Mahomes has beaten him every single time.
Yep.
But he's at least gotten to that step.
Right.
So it's tough because Lamar didn't have a horrible game. Like, he had a bad interception. Yes. He had a bad fumble. But other than that, he was fine. Now, those are 2 costly plays that can't happen. But it's just, I don't know what it is. It's snowy. Like, that stuff's going to happen. It just seems like it's every year. It's something new for this Ravens team.
It is something new every single year. It's just, but again, you mentioned those turnovers. Those matter, and
They
those
do.
lead to
They
points.
definitely do.
They lead to time of possession. It impacts the game, and it's a 2-point game. And to me, I feel like those 2 turnovers were more impactful than even the mishap by Andrews. Yes, terrible drop. Can't do that in that moment, 100%. But I don't think they would have been in a situation like that had it not been for those turnovers to begin with. And Lamar said, like, yeah, that's on him. He can't be turning the ball over. But he also was trying to say that guys needed to be accountable and hold on to the ball, which also is true. So there's both sides to it. But at the end of the day, you are the quarterback. You're the leader of the team. You need to take responsibility for this. So
I mean, I think the Bills, I think, played a great game.
They did.
But I don't think that they won this game. I think the Ravens lost this game.
Really?
The Bills did the things they needed to do. They scored touchdowns. They made stops. But I think the Ravens had, with those turnovers, the Ravens gave it to them, and the Bills pounced on it. Now, again, that's not trying to take away from the Bills' performance. I just think that the situation that the Ravens put themselves in. Oh, we're close to scoring. Fumble, interception, and the fumble gets returned for a lot of yards. The drops, like these things are definitely helping the Bills, and they had the home field advantage. But I think it's also more on the Ravens. Just I think the play calling was questionable. I think that there was that long drive, that not the last drive that Andrews dropped it, but the touchdown beforehand. Derrick Henry scores. They had like an 80-yard drive, and like 60 of the yards were on the ground, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the exact stats. They get there. They're going to go for 2. Good. That would tie the game. So what got them there? The rushing. And Henry had 84 yards in this game. The rushing is what gets them there in that situation. What do? They dial up a pass play. Lamar rolls out, and there's nobody open, and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Why not try a run play? That's your success. Or maybe roll it out and do a different type of pass play. I don't think they're using the strengths of their team. And then they did it again in the last one, which they threw to Andrews. He was open. He drops it. But I think you have the best running quarterback in the league. And now not even try a tush push because that's hard and doesn't work. I feel like he's not the type of running quarterback that it works with.
Yeah.
But honestly, just have him grab it and run with it. Like the little play action fake, or just have Lamar run with the ball, or give a double option with Henry there. Your run game is such an asset, and you're clearly showing pass and these 2-point conversions that are so important, and ended up losing the game because they missed the first one. They had to go for 2 in the end in the first place, because if they kicked an extra point there and only go down by 1, then they only have to kick an extra point again at the end. So It all comes back to bite them, and I think that's a little bit questionable. When the run is the strength of your team, you're not using it enough.
It's a fair point. Yeah, like you mentioned, I think a nice little read option would have been really interesting. And you go out and you get Derrick Henry in free agency to get those 2 yards. So
right,
if Derrick Henry cannot get you those 2 yards, then at least you could say, you know what, we tried with our best player, our best offensive piece besides Lamar, of course. If you can't pull that off, you kind of just tip your cap. Now you roll out, and sure, he's open, but clutch catches in those situations just feel so much harder. I would rather my team get stuffed on a run than dropping a pass. Something about that is just so much more.
It's just the Ravens have all the pressure on them, like, oh, you got to make the catch, because now it's just like in their heads, like they can't win the big playoff game. But I agree with you, like you're that team, like it's like almost like the beast mode against the Patriots Super Bowl 10 years ago now, which is crazy to say, but you have the best power running back in the NFL right now.
Mm-hmm.
Give him the ball and get the yard. And they have so many options. They could set up that play so many different ways with Lamar and Henry there as your rushing threats. And you could still even pass it, but at least, pose the run as a potential threat, because that's what they haven't been able to stop.
Right.
I mean, and Bateman still had a good game. Some of the receivers were good in this game, but in the 2-yard situation, just push. They're not bringing Derrick Henry down.
Right. I also do think, though, they need to bring in a good secondary receiving option. I feel like Zay Flowers, for me, like, he's a very good player. I don't think he's a legitimate wide receiver 1, and I know that he didn't even play in this game because he was injured and stuff. But I think they need another good number 2, like a legit number 2.
Keep an eye on Tyreek Hill if he definitely wants out of Miami. That would be an amazing fit there.
That would be insane. And
I think that'd be just what they need.
Yeah, that would be.
I mean, anybody would just what they need be Tyreek Hill. I mean, he's a great wide receiver, but think about his speed in that rushing attack already as a wide receiver. That could be the game changer for them.
Yeah,
because he might become available. We don't know, but he might.
Right, there's possibility. Yeah.
So that's definitely something to monitor, and that's the games last week. A lot of talk about those, but we can add more in when we've watched every single game. With these playoff games. So quickly, I want to talk about the coaches. We talked about Vrabel last week going to the Patriots. We all knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But now the Lions are out. Both their coordinators are hired. Ben Johnson goes to the Chicago Bears, and Aaron Glenn goes to the New York Jets. So start with Ben Johnson. Keep it quick because the championship games are more important. But I think this is a great fit. Johnson, I think, wanted to go somewhere where he gets a lot of control, and he goes somewhere with a quarterback. I thought he was going Jacksonville, but they had Trent Balake as the GM. Nobody wanted to work with him, and they pushed all the good candidates away. Now, today, they fire him. They finally realized, but I think too late because they probably could have had Ben Johnson to work with Trevor Lawrence. But Now Johnson gets to work with Caleb Williams, which is perfect. There's already a good talent base there. The defense was solid this year, I think. The offense struggled at times and trying to figure it out with who they had there. But this is a really good hire. I like it a lot for Chicago. And just in division staying for Johnson against his former team. So that'll be a fun storyline next year.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that Ben Johnson was the best head coaching candidate on the market.
Definitely.
I have been so impressed with what he's been able to accomplish with the Lions. And yeah, he gets to develop a young quarterback in Caleb, who's considered to be this generational prospect. So you have very solid offensive weapons, but you had Eberflus running the show. Now Eberflus is gone, obviously, long gone. But now maybe these offensive weapons that, again, they have a lot of solid offensive weapons, can finally shine under a Ben Johnson offense. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, I mean, receivers are good, stuff like that. And then Aaron Glenn, former Jet, played there for 8 years. He was coached with the Saints. He was with the Cowboys playing a little bit there too. And now he goes home back to the Jets, the team that drafted him in the first round, and he had success with. He knows the organization. He knows the city. He knows how to handle the media. And yes, he's similar to Robert Saleh, that he was a defensive coordinator. And the Jets, 6 of their last 7 hires, all of them since 2000, defensive-minded head coaches. But they're hiring him as the head coach, not the defensive coordinator. I think they need a guy, no nonsense. Saleh seemed like that guy. He clearly wasn't. He came here and was very different. Too soft with the players, no accountability. And here comes Glenn, a guy who will hold everybody accountable, say what needs to be said. He likes analytics too. That'll be helpful with things. And I think, yes, I see the skepticism. I understand it. It's the Jets. There's always skepticism. But I think this is a good hire, and especially with the options that were out there, he's one of the best candidates available. It's kind of a down year with a lot of teams looking for coaches. There's a down year for candidates, I feel like. Obviously, Ben Johnson, Glenn, Vrabel, the top 3, I would definitely say. But I think the Jets made the right call here.
Yeah, I mean, considering what's available, sure. Yeah, I think that's the right call. Again, like you said though, there is skepticism just because he's a defensive coordinator who's had solid success and not really any head coaching experience. We've already seen this before with the Jets. How is it going to turn out this time? But again, I'm the idea of, listen, everyone gets a clean slate, so let's see what he could do. If he's a motivator, if he's a no nonsense guy, I think that would be great for the Jets because
they need that.
They've dealt with a lot of nonsense this past year. So
tell me about it.
I think that if he could come in and set a good culture, then I think that could do wonders for them. So yeah, bring it on. Let's see what he could do.
I think similar to the Bears, the Jets obviously have talent too. This defense could be back to being elite once again. Still great secondary. The front has some talent. The depth needs to be, I think, rounded out a little bit, but their starting lineup, I think, on D is really good. And the offense has a lot of good pieces too. The line, I think, was actually pretty consistent for the first time in a while last year. Good weapons at wide receiver. Who knows what Devontae's doing? Rodgers, the big question mark. Glenn said he wants to keep him. That's the rumor. Mm-hmm. So we'll see if that happens. But still, Garrett Wilson, they got to get that sorted out. Running backs are really good. So a lot of talent. Big year for the draft, being the 7th overall. Free agency. So they could, potentially try and make some noise if Glenn can get it figured out quickly. I think he's the right man for the job. But let's move into what everybody wants to hear, the AFC and NFC Championship games. We'll start in the NFC. It's the Commanders, it's the Eagles, NFC East only battle. So Giants and Cowboys fans, look away. Somebody will be in the Super Bowl. I think collectively all the Giant fans and Cowboy fans are rooting for Washington, but nobody wants to see the Eagles win, it seems like. But we both think the Eagles are going to win. The Eagles, they looked good last week. Like you said, that Saquon thing could have ended the game earlier, but I still think it was a very good showing from them. They need to get the pass game going, though. I think I said it the first week, too. The pass game just really hasn't been there. It seems like the latter portion of the season, it's been all Saquon, kind of leading them to where they are. And yes, don't mess with what's working, but you need more out of your pass game, especially when you have elite wide receivers like A.J. Brown. You have Devontae Smith. You got to get the ball in their hands to be able to get this tougher for this defense. But I still think the Eagles are going to be able to pull through here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think the Eagles have too much. They, on paper, should beat the Commanders. Now, I will say, though, this Eagles offense, like you've mentioned, has been very run-heavy. So if the Commanders are able to stuff the run somehow, and they still are whatever in the pass game, the Commanders are going to put up points. And it's going to make it very difficult for the Eagles to win. So, again, that's if they're stuffing the run. I don't know if they're going to be able to pull that off because Saquon's been unreal. But the Commanders are going to be putting up points. That's just who they are as a team.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so hard, especially, again, with the idea of just a rookie quarterback. I know like he's not a rookie. He doesn't play like it, doesn't show it. But it's so hard for rookie quarterbacks to, one, make the Super Bowl, let alone no rookie quarterback has won a Super Bowl. So for that reason, especially too, I'm going to be going with the Eagles 24-20 here. I think it's going to be a little bit less scoring than we think, but still it's going to be a well-contested battle. The Commanders are going to be in it, I think, till the very end, but I think the Eagles are going to pull this one out.
And listen, we picked against the Commanders both weeks to start the playoffs, and now we're doing it again. It's just the Eagles were my pick for the Super Bowl, to win the Super Bowl before the playoffs, and I'm going to keep riding with that. I just think, it's got to come to an end eventually, and that's not to say their future isn't great, but also they split the season series, and I think that the Eagles, that was a game that Jalen Hurts got hurt in, and they blew a lead. So I think they're going to look at that and see what they did wrong and allow Jaden Daniels to kind of carve them up at the end and bring them back into the game. Shut that down, have a dominant performance, and take that away into the Super Bowl. So home field advantage, going to matter again. But, still winning in Tampa, winning in Detroit, very hard. But Philly, especially in a championship game, that's not a place you want to be if you're Jaden Daniels. So again, rocking with the Eagles, 27-17, my final score. I still think a somewhat close game, but I think the Eagles are going to pull away and win this one by 10. All right, let's move on to the AFC Championship here. Bills, Chiefs, for the fifth time in the playoffs in the Allen Mahomes era?
Yeah.
Chiefs are 4-0. And something feels different this year. It really does. And now I picked the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl before the playoffs, but I think I have to change my tune with this one. I think the Bills are going to win this game. I really do. The way they played last week, they played really well. Kansas City, they get the win. Still something to be desired. If the Chiefs pull out their typical voodoo black magic at Arrowhead, wouldn't shock me, but I just think the Bills are playing just solid, consistent football. I don't think anybody's really they're all playing an elevated type of football. Not one guy is really doing it. I think they're just all so consistent right now, doing their jobs, and they beat the Ravens. Now they're here, and they're going to have to do that against the Chiefs. It always seems like it's just Josh Allen against the Chiefs, but they need the whole team. They're playing like their whole team. You said this is the best version of the Bills we've seen the last couple of years, which is crazy. I keep saying it, but that's the way they're playing. And Kansas City, they look vulnerable this year. I think the most vulnerable they've been after last year, which they lost. Obviously, everybody lost to the Chiefs because they won the Super Bowl, but that was the most vulnerable they look. They look even more vulnerable this year. And the way the Bills are playing, this is the fifth time. Something's got to give. I have 31-23, the Bills winning this game on the road and going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Like you said, something just feels different this year. And I feel like I say this every single year when the Chiefs play the Bills. But you got to think at some point they're going to pull it off. And I think they're going to pull it off now. The Bills just look better. I don't know how else to put it. Like, they have 13 wins. Chiefs have 15 wins. The Chiefs just don't look as good or as complete as the Bills do. And I think that's going to show here. And
it's really just the eye test.
It's the eye test. I just think the Bills, they look better. I don't know how else to put it. They just look like the better team. And they've basically shown it. I mean, like, the Chiefs have a better record, but I don't know. But again, like you say, then the Chiefs will pull out their voodoo magic and somehow end up winning. But I feel like it's something this year has got to give, because
it really does feel different.
But what I will say, what won't be different is I think it's going to be one of those classic Bills-Chiefs games again. It's going to be insane. It's going to be highly contested. I actually have this game in overtime. I think the Bills are going to pull this one out 31-24. I think the Bills will get the ball first to start off in overtime. They'll score, and then they're going to get some defensive stand, and then that's how they're going to win the game. It's insane. It's insane how often these teams match up, and how heartbreaking it's been for the Bills fans because they every year, I mean, basically they match up with them and then lose. Something feels different, even though that they are on the road. And last year they were home, and you thought, oh, well, maybe because they're home this time. I don't know what it is. I'm going with the Bills.
Yeah, no, I feel it too. I usually don't feel it, but it's just something feels different. I don't know what it is. I think it's just maybe this idea that we keep talking about the Chiefs as this, the worst 15-2 team ever. Just all these close games and fluky wins, blocked field goal, missed field goal at the end, one off the crossbar and in, like all these things that have kind of gotten them to this point. And then I think I would maybe feel differently if the Chiefs just went out last week and had like a great game, but they didn't. They had a good game, but
Right.
I think that would maybe be the difference for me. If they came out and played fantastic against the Texans and just beat them down, be like, all right, I'm going to rock with the Chiefs again. But it's what you see last week. It's you're 15-2 and they're 13-4. Well, right, that's still closer than you would think. I mean, the records are close. Like it's not like it's that big of a gap. Chiefs were the 1 seed, the Bills were the 2 seed, but it's what have you done for me lately type of thing.
True.
All that's thrown out the window when you get in the playoffs. I mean, the Commanders are in the NFC Championship game.
No one had that on their bingo card.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you did all season or what your record is. You're here.
Right.
So that's what it's going to come down to. But it should be another great game. Yeah. Another great day of football. And I think that's it. I think we're done with the episode. This is SRL on the NFL Championship Sunday. I don't even know what episode number we're up to. I think this is 21.
Wow.
Which is crazy. We've made it through almost the whole season. And we'll do an episode next week, a shorter one, recap the championship games and talk about any more head coach hirings that come through. And then a Super Bowl preview we could do the next week as we get closer to that game, a Super Bowl recap, and then we'll figure out a schedule from there for the rest of the offseason. But before we go, make sure to follow us on social media at srl.media on Instagram and TikTok, which was only down for a little bit. So we're still on there making content. Check out this podcast on all podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube at SRL Media. And that's it. This is SRL on the NFL. My name is Brendan Yerkes for Alex Vachapante alongside me. Thank you so much for tuning in.